What's going on, YouTube? Earth Power here, bringing you a deck profile. We're actually going to go over Fire Nature Rush. It's a very simple deck, very easy to use, very efficient, and one of the fastest decks in the format. Although it's fast, I mean, like the other deck types that are out there, Control and Aggro, which is kind of a mix of Rush and Control. But Rush, the idea behind it is to actively drop as many tiny little creatures on the field as possible in the span of 3 or 4 turns and try to break all of the opponent's shields and swing for the game within those 3 to 4 to 5 turns. Usually if a game lasts any longer for a rush deck than that, it's usually on the losing side. But, I mean, the deck is either go in or go home, so we're going to go over that. Alright guys, here we go. Zoom in a little bit here. Alright. The deck's structure is very simple. It runs 4 of every card that I'm going to show you. It's only a 40 card deck. I'm going to put all the links are going to be below as always, but I'm going to post in the description the actual deck list for it as well. So you guys can build it and test it out for yourselves if you want. Alright, so our first card here is going to be Deadly Fighter Braid. He's only a 1-cost mana. He's a quick drop. Usually he's really the best card you could have on your first turn if you can get him out, especially if you are going first, because he's almost a guaranteed going to break at least one shield unless the opponent has a 1-drop blocker, which not very many decks run nowadays unless you've got a deck that's focused around that kind of stuff. But as per the meta, most control decks run a lot of 2-drop blockers because that 3,000 power for the 2-drops is really a big deal for them. So usually if you can drop Deadly Fighter on the first turn, he's almost a guaranteed I'm going to break at least one shield. His only downfall is that he has to attack each turn if able. Now, if the opponent does play a blocker and you don't have any removal for that blocker the next turn, Deadly Fighter's pretty much going to run right into that wall and die. He has no... You don't get a choice with Deadly Fighter Breakoff, pretty much. Second card, very, very important. Rikabu's Screwdriver. Rikabu's Screwdriver has a tap ability, which lets him say instead of attacking for this turn, or whenever he would be able to attack, you can tap him instead to activate his ability. And that ability lets him destroy 1 blocker on the field. So, get him out on the field early, and then if the opponent even does have a blocker that they can play, even though that blocker would be stopping Rikabu from attacking, say, a shield, it still pretty much makes them have to sacrifice their blocker in order to protect a shield with, really, it just creates a -1 for the opponent. So Rikabu's Screwdriver is super useful in getting rid of the pesky blockers that get in the way of Rush a lot, since most blockers have a higher attack than a lot of these Rush guys have. You'll notice that the power on most of these is usually right around 1,000 or 2,000. So very small attack, but very cheap, and they come out really fast. So effects like Rikabu's are very useful for clearing the path for Rush decks. Now a couple of the other star players, Rikabu's Dismantler and Pyro Magnus. These guys are both speed attackers, which means they don't get summoning sickness when you summon them, so they can attack immediately, which is super awesome effective for rush decks, which is why since speed attackers are only a fire civilization effect or ability, almost all rush decks are going to incorporate fire in some way and use either of these two guys, if not both. Rikabu the Dismantler simply has Speed Attacker. He costs 3 mana for 1,000 power. But Pyro Magnus is 3 mana for 3,000 power, and although he has Speed Attacker, he also has an ability where at the end of the turn he returns to your hand. So you kind of throw him out on the field, break a shield real quick, and then he comes back to the hand. This can be useful sometimes, so that way you can avoid him being destroyed by an opponent's card that could attack. But it can also be a downfall because then again you have to summon him a second time, whereas with Rikabu the Dismantler he stays on the field and you can make a different play next turn. Whereas when Firefighter Magnus comes back to the hand, you pretty much have to summon him every turn in order to keep using him. So, but they're both really cheap, effective speed attackers, and they do the job for the deck. Our final fire card is Comet Missile. Costs 1 mana, and it's also a shield trigger, even though it's not that useful, the shield trigger for, say, Rush, since most of the time when a player is going to attack or rush his shields, they're going to do it at the they're pretty much going to attack your shields when they have the game, when they have more than 5 attackers, and they can just finish off your shields immediately, since Rush runs no actual destruction shield triggers. Comet Missile, though, is a shield trigger, but its effect lets you destroy 1 blocker with a power of 6,000 or less. Again, very useful in getting rid of those early blockers that the opponent's going to try to set out in front of you to stop your little barrage of mini attacks. Comet Missile kind of gets in their way and destroys walls that the deck could potentially not be able to get over. We're going to move on to the nature now. Remember, that was 5 cards. Only 5 different cards for Rush. Or for Fire. Deadly Fighter. Comet Missile, Rikabu the Dismantler, Pyro Fighter, Rikabu Screwdriver, and the Deadly Fighter Breakball. Take note that all these guys are under 3 mana. There's not a single card in this deck that costs more than 3 mana. Alright, first part of the nature section. Sniper Mosquito. Another 1-drop. It costs 1 mana, has 2,000 power, and has an effect that says whenever he attacks, return a card from your mana zone to your hand. Now, good Rush decks, or good players playing Rush, if they're using Sniper Mosquito, if he's your first turn drop, say you play mana on your first turn, you summon Sniper Mosquito, the second turn, even if you do have a clear path to the shields, more than half the time you're not going to want to break that shield with Sniper Mosquito yet, because you're only going to have 2 mana, and when he attacks, he's going to have to return one of those mana to your hand. This is a mandatory effect, you don't get to choose. So what some people do, they will wait with Sniper Mosquito, wait till their 3rd turn, usually, say if you have a Comet Missile or Pyro Fighter down in mana, attack with Sniper Mosquito on that 3rd turn, return either the Pyro or the Comet Missile to the hand, and then attack with whatever their 2nd turn monster was and whatever they played for their 3rd turn. So I'll take you through a few steps in using the deck here in a little while to show you what I mean. But with Sniper Mosquito, it really can be a useful effect after the 2nd turn, just because you are now cycling through your mana. It gives you an extra option in the hand, and allows you to either play Comet Missile or Pyro Fighter down in mana early, and get it back later in case you need either one of those two. Say you don't know exactly what you're playing, whether it's real blocker heavy, or if it's something that you're going to need Pyro Fighter for, or Rikabu the Dismantler to go for the 1-2-3. Sniper Mosquito allows you to pretty much be safe behind choosing either one of those options. Say you choose to throw your Comet Missile down and go for the Rikabu the Dismantler play, Sniper Mosquito will let you get that Comet Missile back later in case the opponent winds up being very blocker heavy. So, very useful card in the fire nature Rush aspect. Second nature card, Hearty and Polygon. This guy was given to us in the 9th set, 9th or 10th, or no, I don't know, 9th or 11th set, not the 10th. But Captain Polygon is another 1-drop for 2,000 power, so another very quick card to throw out there early in the game. And he says at the end of each of your turns, if this creature broke any shields, return it to your hand. Now, that's not the greatest effect. I mean, I'd actually much rather have just a 1-drop 1,000 power creature with no effect. But since we don't have any of those, Hearty and Polygon is the next best thing. So when he breaks the shield, he returns to your hand at the end of the turn. That can kind of be useful, kind of like in the Pyro Fighter Magnus aspect, where he'll return to your hand and avoid being destroyed. But then you have to summon him again, and unlike Pyro Fighter, he doesn't have speed attackers, so he's got to sit on the field one more turn before he gets to attack. But he can kill creatures and not have to be returned to the hand, so that can be useful if you're going up against another rush deck. Yeah, one of the aspects that makes Fire Nature better, in my opinion, than some of the other rush decks is that with the nature aspect, you have a lot more power on your side of the field, whereas with Fire Dark, everything is very weak, usually right around 1,000, 2,000 power. And with Fire Light, you've got all your little light creatures, but none of them really go over 2,000 power. Sure, they have a lot of neat effects, and you can use Larva Gear, which can tap all of your opponent's blockers, but I honestly think Fire Nature is probably the best in terms of just quick, you don't have to sit behind certain cards to wait for other cards to work, such as with Larva Gear, since it is an evolution. Fire Nature is just very quick, to the point. Just drop 1, 2, 3, and then win the game. So we'll go over to our next card here in the nature now. Torcon, my all-time favorite. Love this guy. For those of you who remember, my old username used to be Torcon the Great. It was modeled after this card right here, just because, I don't know, I'm just really fond of this card. He's good for, this is another part that makes Fire Nature really good against other rush decks, is the fact that it has Torcon and can use its shield trigger ability. It's just a 2-mana, 1,000 attack creature with shield trigger. So basically, when Rush is coming at your shields, if they hit a Torcon, he'll be brought to the field, and then he'll allow you to hopefully get maybe a quicker edge over the opponent. Because the idea between when two Rush decks play each other, it's whoever can pretty much break the opponent's shields first. And so, say the opponent goes first, and they get their 1-drop, and then you go and you get your 1-drop, you're already a shield behind since they're going first. So when they break the shield Torcon and he hits the field, he pretty much gives you that extra monster, that extra little bit of advantage. So really, really useful card against anti-rush, and just another good nature card in general. I mean, there's better 2-drops in the long run, such as Crowwinger, which gets plus 1,000 power for each water and darkness creature your opponent has on their side of the field, so he can get really big. But I prefer Torcon just because it gives me that little bit of an extra edge over some rush decks. And, I mean, half the time with abilities in Rush, they very rarely get to use their abilities to the fullest potential. So, Torcon just creates, I mean, he just becomes that body that Crowwinger would be, even if it didn't have power. So, that's why I choose Torcon over some of the other 2-drops. Our last nature creature is Quixotic Swine. Now, he is truly the reason Fire Nature Rush is probably one of the best Rush decks. It costs 2 mana, has 1,000 power, plus. Now, that plus means that he can get more power, and that's due to his ability. It says whenever another creature is played onto the field, he gets plus 3,000 power for that turn. Now, that's huge. That's during your opponent's turn when they summon monsters, and that's during your turn when you summon monsters. So, say you start off first turn, you play Deadly Fighter Breakball. Second turn, you summon Quixotic Swine. Now, say your opponent plays a blocker next turn, one of those ones with 3,000 power. Now, on your next turn, you're going to draw. Now, say you play a speed attacker. Now that you've played that monster, Quixotic Swine goes up to 4,000 power, which allows him to get over that blocker. And it even allows him to kill other cards that normally wouldn't be able to be destroyed, such as Valiant Warrior, the 6-mana fire creature that has 4,000 power and goes up to 7,000 and can attack untapped creatures. This guy can, with one monster summoned, he can get over that, and with another monster summoned, he can simply destroy Valiant Warrior. And during your opponent's turn, if they want to summon it, say if Quixotic Hero Swine Snout's tapped on the field, he only has 1,000 power, and say the opponent has an Aqua Hulkus or something, if they summon a monster, they're not going to be able to destroy Quixotic Hero Swine Snout with that Aqua Hulkus during their turn. Because Quixotic Hero Swine Snout, since they summon that monster, goes up to 4,000 power, and Aqua Hulkus can't do anything to that without destroying itself, which would be just silly. So Quixotic Hero Swine Snout is a huge advantage in the Fire Nature Rush, because it just gets so big and the power here can be very vital and very important when rushing through the opponent's blockers and some of their creatures that are going to try to destroy your little mini creatures. So, to go back over nature real quick, we had Quixotic Hero Swine Snout, huge. Torcon, my anti-rush for when I'm playing against other rush decks. And then our 2 1-drops, Hearty and Polygon, and Sniper Mosquito. Now notice that all the nature stuff is less than 2 mana. We've got Quixotic and Torcon that cost 2, and Hearty and Sniper Mosquito which cost 1. So like I said, the ratio for this deck is very low mana cost. All of these creatures can be summoned with 2 to 3 mana. Now, you notice that was only 4 nature cards and 5 fire cards, which means we've got a total of 36 cards in the deck. Now, this next card is neither fire nor nature itself. It's actually both. We've got the Rainbow Civ Gonta. He's fire and nature civilization, which means he needs 1 fire mana and 1 nature mana tapped in order to be summoned. Now, he's very simple. No effect, just costs 2 mana, 4,000 power. Very big deal. This card is very hard to get rid of early in the game for controls, other rush decks, everything. This is what gives Fire Nature so much advantage over the other rushes, is that Fire Light, Fire Dark, and Fire Water, well, Fire Light and Fire Water don't have any dual civs. So they don't have anything that can be summoned as big as this for this cheap mana. And then Fire Dark doesn't have any 2-drops that, much like Gonta, even though there is a Fire Dark civilization, they don't have a rush aspect to it like Fire Nature does. Gonta gives so much advantage early in the game with this 4,000 power. It gets past all the cheap little fire spells such as Phantom Dragon's Flame, Crimson Hammer, Burst Shot, all the anti-rush spells that give Rush so many problems when it faces control. All those cheap little effective kill cards that get rid of all the other cheap guys. Because like I said, they all run 1,000, 2,000 power, and those can all be destroyed by the Phantom Flame, the Volcano Charger, the Burst Shot, all that mess. But Gonta gets past all of that. He can't be killed by cheap weenie kill. And with this 4,000 power, he gets past all the early blockers that those controls can set out. Minus the fact of Bloody Squeeto, but Squeeto dies whenever it battles anything, so you can usually get rid of that with something else. Now, Gonta's only downfall is that he goes into the mana tapped. So, early on in the game, if you don't have a nature or fire civ, but you have Gonta in your hand, he counts as both mana in the mana pool, but only one at a time, so he either counts as fire or nature mana. So say you don't have either your fire or your nature, say you drew like 3 nature cards, a Deadly Fighter, Braid, and Gonta. If you were to play Gonta in mana, he goes into the mana tapped, which means you can't use him the turn that you play him in mana. So you wouldn't be able to play that Deadly Fighter, Braid on your first turn. So that's one of the only downfalls, but I mean, it's so minute compared to the power that Gonta could give you and the control that he can give you in the duel, that it just makes Gonta way too good, and it's be stupid not to use him in a Fire Nature rush. Okay, so I'm going to take you through a quick little couple turns in the rush here. Show this up a little bit. The basic idea behind rush is to drop your first turn creature, drop your second turn creature, and then play a speed attacker the next turn. And that way, on your second turn, you broke 1 shield with the card you dropped first turn. And then on your third turn, you're breaking 3 shields with the creature you dropped your first turn, the creature you dropped your second turn, and the speed attack you played third turn. So now the opponent should be at 1 shield, if all went well. And then at that point, it's just, you have 3 creatures to their 1 shield, and since it's their third turn, they should hopefully not have very many options to deal with you. Shield triggers are a problem when playing with Rush, just because, I mean, a simple Aqua Surfer can put a very heavy dent in your little barrage early game. So, I'll just show you a few quick turns here. Play 5 shields. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And looking at our hand, we got a we got a perfect hand. All right, I'll be able to show you guys perfectly. All right, we got a Torcon, a Pyro Fighter Magnus, a Rikabu Screwdriver, a Hearty and Polygon, and a Deadly Fighter Braid. So let's say we're going first turn here. I'm gonna make this play here. I'm not gonna play either my Rikabu Screwdriver or my Pyro Fighter Magnus in mana yet, because I'm gonna want to play those. On my second and third turn, which basically means since I don't want to put either of those in mana, Deadly Fighter Breakball is not going to be my first turn option. Which is okay, because since I have a Torcon and a Hearty and Polygon, I can play Torcon in mana and play my Hearty and Polygon first turn. And I'll do that. Torcon will go in mana, tap my mana, play Hearty and Polygon on the field. Alright, second turn, the opponent's going to draw, do whatever. I'll draw for my second turn. And that's beautiful, I got a Gonta. So, we'll untap Torcon. We'll play Deadly Fighter Breakball in mana. Now, here's another option. You do have a couple options here. The best thing about Fire Nature Rush is that due to all the very, very low drops, you have 3 1-drop creatures and then the Comet Missile. So you could technically crap out 4 monsters or 3 monsters by your second turn and another 2 on your third turn. So you can have 5 monsters on your board by the third turn, which could be a very big deal when playing against Control, which is going to try to kill as many creatures as fast as possible. And the more you crap out them, the harder time it's going to have with that. I say crap out monsters, it sounds terrible. But here we have an option. Now, I could play Deadly Fighter Breakball into mana and play my Rikabu Screwdriver, which would be a good play if I knew I was playing Control. But Rikabu Screwdriver is kind of pointless against other rush decks. So, depending on what deck I'm playing, I could either play my Pyro Fighter down in mana and tap 2 for Gonta. And now next turn, when I draw, hopefully I'll draw a fire creature, which I do, beautiful. I could play that in mana, tap 1 for the Deadly Fighter, and 2 for the Rikabu Screwdriver. And this could be a big deal against other rush decks, since you want to put out as many creatures as possible against them as fast as possible, because they're going to do the same to you. And if they get any advantage on you at all, it's pretty much going to be hopeless for you to try to win. But now Hearty and Polygon too. Back this up a few turns. Hearty and Polygon, when he breaks a shield during the second turn, he's going to return to your hand. So you could even put Deadly Fighter Breakball into mana, go ahead and tap 2 for Screwdriver, attack with Hearty and he'll return to the hand. And now when I draw my next card, I'll have a few options. Say if I draw a Nature Mana, I could have played that Nature Mana down, played Hearty and Gonta now. So the deck does give you options, and there are a bunch of different ways to play, but I'll take you through that quick 1, 2, 3 turn play here. Okay, so we had our starting hand of 5. Let's do this. Draw 1. I'll go ahead, play Rikabu Screwdriver mana, tap 1 for Deadly Fighter Breakball. That's first turn. Second turn, we'll draw. We'll go ahead and play Hearty and Polygon in mana, tap 2 for Torcon. That's our second mana creature, or second turn creature. Deadly Fighter Breakball on a first turn will break 1 shield. We'll pretend that these are the opponent's shields. So he breaks 1 shield. Now the opponent's at 4 shields. Now we'll go to turn 3. Now turn 3, usually at this point, that's where your opponents now have their second turn and drop the blocker. So again, they have 4 shields and a blocker. So let's say we'll play our card mana, tap 3 for Firefighter. So now I've got our 1, 2, 3. We're definitely going to break at least 2 shields this turn, if they don't have a shield trigger, of course. But we're going after 2 more shields. And if they have a blocker, you know, it's going to be able to block at least one of these, and it usually has about 3,000 power. The good thing about Pyrofighter is that he also has 3,000 power, so we can kill those cheap little 2-drops like Madrillenfish, Sarius, and some of the other cheap little 2-drop blockers. So they'll basically 1, 2, 3. Breaking 1, 2, 3 shields. And now Pyrofighter will return to the hand, and now your opponent basically has a hand of about 10 cards and about 3 mana, and they have to get rid of 2 of your creatures and the potential for a speed attacker next turn, as well as, now that it's on my 4th turn, I can play another mana and tap 3. So even if they did play a blocker, and say they killed a blocker or played a blocker, killed a creature, I tap 3 for my speed attacker, tap 1 Comet Missile to get rid of that blocker, and now they only have 1 shield, and I've got 2 attackers. Firefighter has speed attacker, break the shield, and Torcon Missile for game. So that's the idea behind Rush, is to pretty much win the game anywhere from 4 to 5 turns. And at that point, your opponent's at about 4 mana, and at that point they can start actually like putting heavy options down on the board. They can get cards down that could really put a stun in your strategy. But hopefully you found this helpful. Like I said, Fire Nature Rush, very, very simple to use deck, very, very effective. It's one of my favorite decks. Is my favorite deck, to be honest. I've been a active Rush player since I got into the game, just because I love the simple little strategy behind it. And even though some people say that it is just simple and mindless to use, I mean, there is a lot of with Duel Masters, it's like a chess game. You really have to think ahead of your opponent and know what you're going to play 2 or 3 turns into your match before you actually play. Like paying attention to, say, instead of playing a speed attacker this turn, maybe on my 3rd turn I'm going to want to play a 2-drop and a 1-drop creature, and then on my 4th turn I'll play my speed attacker. So that way I'll have more attackers on my 4th turn than I would have had I played the speed attacker and played these 2 creatures next turn. So there's a lot of strategy behind it, a lot more than some people give it credit for, which is why I enjoy it. I love trying to think my way out of sticky situations with, I mean, the 8 different cards that I've got in this deck, or 10, excuse me. Yeah, 10 different cards, and about a million ways to use them, guys. But yeah, guys, leave a like, comment, subscribe, let me know what you think. Peace, guys.